Hey everybody. Um, this is Dr. Johnson, and this is a new thing that we're doing for AP World. So I sent this map to get copied off and to be given to your sub. So hopefully that has happened. If it hasn't, then I also have attached it to the email that I sent. So you're welcome to download that, make notes on it, using OneNote or a similar program, um, so you can fill it in. But hopefully you've got the paper version. And I'll be at a doctor's appointment. So this is something that you guys will be doing in the first part of class. Hopefully I will be done and able to join you over Zoom for the rest of class. Again, refer to my email on that. But let me get started here. Okay, so in an attempt to get everybody familiar with like basic world geography, where everything is in the world, we're going to go through it. So make sure you have your map ready. And once you do, we'll get started. All right. So I know this most likely is a review for you, but just in case it isn't, we're going to go through the continents and the oceans. So North America is right here. You can see my cursor on the screen, kind of circling it. South America is right here. Again, cursor on the screen. Europe is right here. Asia is right here. Africa is right here. And Australia is right here. And Antarctica is down here. We have the Atlantic Ocean. You can see how Africa kind of looks like it almost fits like a jigsaw puzzle with South America and parts of North America and the Caribbean. And that's because we believe, and there's pretty good evidence for it, that all the continents were together on one side of the world at one point. We called it the great supercontinent. We called it Pangea. And over the course of millions of years, they've been drifting apart. So the Atlantic Ocean is slowly getting bigger and bigger, and they're underneath the water. There's a ridge where lava comes up and forms new crust as the Atlantic plate grows bigger and bigger. Meanwhile, of course, the Pacific Ocean, which was once a great ocean that covered the whole other side of the world, is getting smaller and smaller. And that is why you see mountain ranges and islands all around the edges of the Pacific. We call it the Ring of Fire, because the Pacific plate is going underneath those thicker crust plates. And of course, that creates mountain ranges. The above ground mountain ranges will be covering, but the underwater ones are all islands. And of course, there's a lot of volcanic activity in those areas. So the Pacific Ocean, I have it labeled on both sides of the map here. It's obviously, it goes around the opposite side of the planet there. So just make sure you're aware that that is the Pacific on both sides. And then of course, on this flat map, someone going this way would warp over to this side. So we can kind of imitate what is happening on the globe. The Indian Ocean is right here. Again, this is the area that we'll be talking about for quite some time as the center of world trade and civilization, etc. The Arctic Ocean is up here. As a matter of fact, if the ice melted, you would see that the entire top of the planet is water. It's an ocean. So that's all just ice up there. And then, of course, on the bottom of the planet is an actual continent, Antarctica. All right, that takes us to some straits and some seas that are important that we keep referring to all the time. And I'm starting to realize that a lot of people don't know where they're at, so we'll go over those. The Strait of Magellan is right here. It separates Cape Horn and Tierra del Fuego from the rest of South America. Of course, the explorer Magellan went through it. That is why it is named Strait of Magellan. State of Gibraltar is right here in between Spain and North Africa. The Bering Strait is up here, and it's obviously between this little part of Russia here and this little area over in Alaska over here. And as we've talked about Native Americans, we talked about hunters going across the iced over version of the Bering Strait back during the last ice age, or possibly the land version that was exposed by so much water being locked up in ice. The Strait of Malacca, very important artery of trade right between the Malay Peninsula and the island of Sumatra. A lot of references to the Strait of Malacca in your summer reading book, When Asia Was the World. And of course, we'll be discussing it as we discuss some of the emerging empires in Southeast Asia. The Mediterranean is a sea I'm sure you're probably already familiar with, but and we've already discussed it in class, but I just wanted to make sure you knew where it was, in between Europe and Africa. The South China Sea, which is in the news quite a bit because of the tension between China and the United States and other countries, is right here. The Sea of Japan is right here in between Japan and the Korean Peninsula. The Arabian Sea is right here, kind of this left hand, sea created by India sticking down into the Indian Ocean there. And then over on the right is the Bay of Bengal. The Caribbean is right here, okay? And that includes kind of out into this area. The Caribbean actually, I need to adjust that pointer. It's more, covers more this whole area. This in particular is the Gulf of Mexico right there. The Persian Gulf, where many of the world's oil tankers go to get their oil cargo, is right there in between what is now Iran and Saudi Arabia and a number of other Middle Eastern countries. The Red Sea between Africa and the Arabian Peninsula is right there. The Black Sea, right here in between Asia Minor, the peninsula that is now Turkey, and the rest of Europe, something that has long been of strong interest to Russia. And that takes us to mountain ranges and deserts. So we'll start with the world's largest desert, the Sahara Desert, right here. And of course, we'll be talking extensively about that this year and the trade routes across it. The Outback Desert, which we've already mentioned, is right here, this part of Australia. The Gobi Desert is up in northern China / Mongolia. The Kalahari Desert is in the modern day countries of Namibia and Botswana, right there in southern Africa. The Arabian Desert, which we'll be talking about quite a bit, is right here in the Arabian Peninsula. A desert that we'll discuss when we discuss the Nazca culture is the Atacama Desert, right here. And of course, it's because rain clouds with moisture in them aren't able to get past the Andes that this desert has been created here. And then up in North America, probably the desert you're most familiar with if you've been anywhere near Arizona or Southern California is the Mojave Desert. So those are your deserts. And let's talk now about mountain ranges. So we've got the Himalayas, obviously the world's largest and tallest, in terms of the size of the mountains, tallest mountain range. We've got the Rocky Mountains in North America, a very significant mountain range, again, created by the subduction of the Pacific plate underneath the North American plate. You've got the Andes Mountains, and that, of course, runs all along the edge of South America. And as we discuss the Inca, we'll be discussing the Andes. The Alps are probably the most significant mountains in Europe, but are hardly the only mountains in Europe. We're only looking at major mountain ranges, so we're not talking about the Pyrenees or the Carpathians or any of the others. The Appalachians are on the eastern side of the United States, very old. They've been worn down considerably from their once towering heights. And the Ural Mountains, which are supposed to be the separating point between Asia and Europe, but significant. They are a very significant kind of point in Russia, where this whole area over here past the Urals is kind of more wilderness, more Siberia, and this whole area is more the kind of the civilized side of Russia. And that's still true even to this day. All right, if you'll flip over your map, we're going to go through the rivers of the world. And we've got quite a few important rivers, and we'll be referring to them quite a bit as we go through the history. So you need to be familiar with where they are. And then I've got a couple of miscellaneous things, like some odd landforms that I wasn't able to get on the last map, and some regions that are important to know. So we'll start with the Yukon River up here in North America. And I know these are on alphabetical order on your map, so you'll have to kind of look alphabetically where it's at, because I'm not going in the order they're listed there. I'm just kind of going around the map here. The Columbia River, running through Oregon, Washington State, etc., parts of Idaho, I believe. Well, looks like I need to fix that animation there, but that's supposed to be the Colorado River. And of course, the Grand Canyon has been carved out by the Colorado River, running out of Colorado and through some western states into the Gulf of California right here. The Rio Grande, which has been in the news quite a bit since it forms part of the border between Mexico and the United States. And since the border has been in the news, so has the Rio Grande. The Missouri River, the second longest river in the United States. And notice here, my pointer stops at this river right here and goes all the way up, because that's where the Missouri River ends, when it kind of drains into the longest river in North America, the Mississippi River, the mighty Mississippi. And so that is almost the end of our North American rivers, but we still have one more, which is the St. Lawrence Seaway, which is part saltwater, part freshwater as it comes out of the Great Lakes and then heads into the Atlantic Ocean. We've got down in South America, the Orinoco River up here in Venezuela, the Amazon River, which is the river that most of the rivers in the Amazon basin drain into. And that's, of course, a giant rainforest there. The São Francisco River, another important river in Brazil, and the Paraná River, which is a very important river that runs through. It forms the borders for Paraguay, parts of Uruguay, and Argentina are all touching the Paraná River. Of course, it's a source of important trade into the interior of South America. Over to Africa, we have the Zambezi River, forming the borders of several countries here as it goes out to the Atlantic. The Congo River, which all of these smaller tributaries drain into in the Congo River Basin, which is the other great rainforest area of the world. The Niger River, right there, which goes right through the country of Nigeria, and also partly through the country of Niger on its way to the Atlantic Ocean. And then the Senegal River, which, if you know your African geography, you know that there is actually a country named Senegal as well. And then, of course, we're going to jump up into Europe here. Coming out of the Alps and going south, kind of through southern France and whatnot, is the Rhone River. And then probably the largest of the rivers in France is the Loire, right there, the Loire River. And then a very important river, which is going to form a geographic barrier during the world wars, that's going to be incredibly important, is the Rhine River. A very important river, especially as the Roman Empire tried to stave off the barbarians, is the Danube, kind of forming a natural barrier there, going out of the mountains up here all the way down to the Black Sea. Jumping back down into Africa for a moment, we've got the Nile, which is the longest river in the world. And then over into the Middle East real quick, we've got the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers, which are those twin rivers in Mesopotamia that we've discussed already when we discussed Sumer. The Dnieper River is another important river in Eastern Europe / Russia, depending on what time period you're talking about. And another very important river, which we'll be talking about quite a bit, especially as we get into the 20th century, is the Volga. And that drains into the Caspian Sea. And then we have over in Siberia, the Ob River, the river that forms the border between China and Russia and has often been the site of disagreements, etc., is the Amur River. Down to kind of southern Asia here, the river that runs through the middle of Pakistan is the Indus River. And then we have a river that kind of runs out of the Himalayas and through India right here, a river that is actually considered holy to the Hindu people, to the Hindu religion, and people would ritually bathe in it. It is the Ganges River. And then, of course, we have another river that runs down out of the Himalayas into parts of India and what is now Bangladesh. That is the Brahmaputra River. The Mekong River runs out of the Himalayan foothills all the way down through Southeast Asia, through what is now, of course, Vietnam. And during the Vietnam War, the Mekong River was something that was very important. So we'll be referring to it quite a bit this year. The Yangtze River is one of the great rivers of China. There are two really important rivers which kind of form the core of Chinese civilization early on. Yangtze is one of them. And the other, which we've already discussed when we discussed the Shang Dynasty, is the Yellow River. And I believe that is all the rivers. That just takes us to some miscellaneous landforms here. So we'll start with Greenland up here, which is actually more of a V shape if the ice were all melted. So if all the glaciers were melted, you would see that that's all actually just ice in the middle there, and it's more of a V. But that is a significant chunk of territory there that is actually currently owned by Denmark. As a matter of fact, it was in the news not too long ago that President Trump wanted to try to buy Greenland from Denmark, but Denmark was like, no, we're not interested in selling it. Madagascar is this rather large island off the coast of Africa. Again, we'll be referring to it as we discuss history. New Zealand we'll be discussing as well. It's another significant set of islands right here. Okay. Right here, this, of course, is something that as we get into Islam, we'll be discussing quite a bit, and that is the Arabian Peninsula. And as we talk about Southeast Asia, the Strait of Malacca, etc., another very important peninsula is the Malay Peninsula. And over here in Europe, we have the Iberian Peninsula, which contains what is now Spain and Portugal. And of course, For a long time, it was under the control of Muslims. That they were known as the Moors. We'll talk about this. We haven't gotten to it yet, but we'll talk about it as we get further on. And the two regions that you need to know are the Middle East, which I think after the number of references that we've made to it as we've done current events, everybody's kind of pretty much aware where the Middle East is, but just to be sure, there it is. And then the other really important region of reference that we will kind of continually mention, and you'll need to know where that is Latin America. So that pretty much is from Mexico on down, and then that will include the Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, etc. So those are your important geographic features that you need to know, and we will have a quiz when I come back. So I will let you know that date when I'm able to figure it out. So I do want to mention real quick that there is a website that you can go to where you can quiz yourself on the world rivers. It does have some rivers on it that I didn't include on our map just because they're rivers that we just won't reference, like the Mackenzie River up in Canada, or the Darling River down in Australia, or the Lena River up in Siberia. There are some rivers that we just won't talk about, so they're not in there. But yeah, those are the rivers that you can just kind of continually take this quiz over and over again, and I have included that link in the email that I sent you. So thanks for paying attention, and if you still have time after this, after filling in your map, and I haven't yet called the teacher in your room and we haven't started Zoom yet, feel free to quiz each other over the various features, or to take this quiz and see how well you can do, and see how long it takes you to get a perfect score on it. So those are your world rivers. And I think that's everything I needed to cover. So I am going to end this video, and thanks a lot for paying attention.